plan, so I don't know where it's looking for you there. So this is how I mean about what's going on with the course, because it's looked somewhere. It's looked over here. Where exactly?
Yeah, I guess I have to unmute, right?
No, no, you don't need to unmute.
We can.
You're ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this second presentation for today, I'm going to mention all the new integrations that we delivered between last year and the beginning of this year. So it's a list of all plugins, but also of some scenarios. Obviously, these are use cases that we wrote, so it's not necessarily a real use case, but it's probably a way to show how all these plugins could be used together to accomplish certain business scenarios for different kind of situation. Okay, so let's first of all introduce again the automation app. So why we are in, I already said that in the first presentation, but let me just reinforce this. We are investing in these integrations because we think it's important for our customers to expand the usage of workload automation to orchestrate all these scenarios. Because in this way they can get one single point of control for their automation. And it's easier to manage as much as automation is possible from the same tool and gather, achieve the same compliance, achieve the same kind of auditing and so on. So it's easier for our customers to expand the usage of workload automation to manage other scenarios rather than use different tools for doing that. It's an advantage. And just a reminder, most of the plugins available on this automation app are out of the box for our customers, so are already covered by the standard license of the product. There is no extra charge. The only plugins that could be charged are a few that have been developed by business partners. So in that case, they may charge you if they want. But I think more than 90% of the plugins are all developed by the lab. So first, are you using any of these plugins? Have you tried? Do you think? I mean, I will ask again this question after showing all the numbers of new plugins that we have delivered. But right now, are you considering the usage of any of these plugins? Do you see the need to implement these kind of scenarios? Or perhaps these kind of use cases are managed elsewhere in your organization? And that could be a point where we may need to connect also with some of your colleagues to show what they can do. So this is something I want to bring to your attention. So what do we provide on the Automation Hub? The Automation Hub is a showcase of our integrations. It's not only about plugins, job types. There are also other kind of plugins or materials available. For example, there are plugins for the event-driven workload automation component. There are templates. We are providing there, for example, the dashboards for Grafana and for Instana. So whatever is really common and out of the box for customers, we can put it there. If it's not a piece of code, but it's something that can be downloaded and installed easily on top of the product.
I would have thought for most end users, the most important piece for the automation hub would be the dashboards. So creating your own job type, I think, is something that most organizations wouldn't want to do or wouldn't need to do. Whereas creating your own custom dashboards is. So whether that's if you've got an application with a known job stream name, to create a dashboard that only looks at that set of job streams, create the dashboard for that application, and then give that dashboard to your application support teams. That would be quite a good thing to do, quite a common requirement for a lot of customers. So the dashboarding side, improving that side would be great, but creating new job types, I think, is probably less important.
Now we had no contribution directly from customers. We allow them to do it if they want to. We allow to there is this toolkit available on the website. Yes, that you can download and try. But normally we get more a requirement to us to do it. So we try to.
But the Maven toolkit is for creating new job types.
Yes.
Not creating dashboards.
Oh, you mean we would need to have a tool for doing that? Well, actually,
either a tool or.
You mean an DWC dashboard?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
you can do that from the DWC and export them.
Yes. The problem is that the documentation for that bit isn't particularly good.
Okay.
So, for example, you've got the file transfer dashboard, and you can use that as a starting point to then modify it and create your own dashboard. So if you want to keep the widgets where they are, but then instead of associating with the file type or the job type file transfer, if you want to change it to be application or job stream specific or a different type of resource, the documentation for that isn't really available. And that, I think, is something that would help a lot of organizations. What does everybody else
I will prepare this comment.
How many people using different job types? We are primarily scripting with bash scripting to so the concept of a file transfer job type. We wouldn't do anything apart from standard job types.
Is it something you guys would use? File transfer job types?
No, because we script everything. That's already there written. Not going to reinvent the wheel on that part.
But if you've got a set of job streams that start ABC and you want to put that into a separate dashboard to show the job streams, all the different components associated with those, and give that to an application support team, would that be something that would be of interest?
From a line of business point of view, is what we're saying, like
from a line of business, or
so you can have like say the stock programmers or whatever, yeah, and they'd like to know all the stock jobs and programs that run that day. There might be. I don't think there'll be an appetite for that because, from my opinion, I'm speaking to down here, but we have a 99% success rate in our production environment, 99.9 actually. So 99.9% of the times it's going to give you the same. Everything's going through. It may be better in our test environment, QA, prod, pre-prod, but for our production stuff, it'll be just.
But do you give your application support teams access to the DWC today?
No.
Some of them have
So having a dashboard would be.
Some of them have customised their own dashboards, haven't they? I think it would be a benefit, I think, because STP guys use it, don't they? And we're going to put it up towards the other payments teams who are using the cloud. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we do give that to some of our application support teams.
The question is, people say we do web admin, so.
Yeah. This is
But I think the dashboarding side of things will be more of interest to customers than the creating new job types. Should we open that up to the people online and ask them as well?
Oh,
Anyone want to chip in?
Have a look at the NFT plugin dashboard. I think that will become useful soon. We're just starting to deploy NFT in some of our applications, batch workloads. I've already started to use the CyberArk integration for SQL Server authentication. And one of the things I've just replied to Stefan to say, the third-party applications, the third-party plugins that have been developed, whilst they do, some of them come with support, that support comes with additional cost in some of those cases, and that can obviously lead to internal complications for us business administrators. So it's just additional things to be aware of, really.
Yes. Yes.
okay. Okay, I'll move on. So we already saw this slide this morning. We have more than 95 integrations available for many different types of applications, and also there are some data on the usage of the Automation Hub website. We have many also case studies available, some use cases that describe how the plugins can be used, so that can be of use. We have also blogs written to explain some of these integrations, but this is a strategic approach for us to invest and create new integrations, because we think that especially with the cloud journey, I mean the journey to cloud, more and more customers will be using cloud services for many different uses, in particular data pipelines processing. And so we believe that's important, that we provide the capability to orchestrate these cloud services in one workload automation job station.
So the priority of excuse me, creating new job types, how is that done? Is it?
Well, we have some strategic ideas, like we are completing a set of plugins to include some cloud services on the three main cloud providers, AWS, Azure, and Google. But apart from that, normally we have already actually a long list of requirements from customers.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming popular, especially I would say for new customers. So customers that we achieved displacing competitors.
Yes.
They were already using some integrations and they want to replace them with ours, or they want to avoid writing new scripts to orchestrate some applications, and they want to do it with job types because it's easier.
Yes, competitors will always have a job type that's different to the ones that you've got, but there are competitors that have job types that aren't available within IWS, and whether there are priorities based on competitive parity
Yeah.
I mean, the two that spring to mind are Airflow and Kafka. So I know
I'm not sure
some
if
of
they are in the roadmap for this year. Let me go check. It doesn't seem to be. Currently, we are. I'll come back to that. We are following priorities. Customers that are pushing for for one plugin or another because they want to implement some scenarios.
Yes.
And we are getting a lot of requirements in this area. So certainly we will continue to invest and create ourselves the plugins. But then depends on the customers that we get, requirements that we get on which one we go first. But we have a long list in the roadmap.
Yes.
So this is basically the list of plugins delivered between 2022 and the first quarter of this year. UiPath is I will give you more details around these plugins and some scenarios details. But UiPath is an RPA tool. So this is the plugin to orchestrate the UiPath RPA pods. Azure Data Factory is a plugin in the Azure Cloud Services portfolio. BigQuery is for processing big data in Google. Amazon S3 and S3 batch operations are all related to the AWS objects and the way to manage that, also with batch operations. Same goes for AWS batch. Then we have more in the data pipeline area, Azure Blob and data lake storage. And SAP BODS, this is the data services. It's a SAP utility in ETL, basically. We are also increasing the number of plugins we have for SAP scenarios. So that's also very important. Then we have released a plugin for AWS SNS and SQS, so messages and notifications in AWS cloud environment. Snowflake, it's one of the most recent. It's another tool that basically cloud data warehouse. Software-defined mainframe is something more specific, created for one customer, and I will talk a little bit about that. This is basically for customers who are offloading workloads from the mainframe and moving them to some distributed environment. So this is specific of one application. And then SAP EBP is another plugin in the SAP area for integrated business planning. Is business planning for supply chain. So these were the most important deliveries in last year and the beginning of this year. Let's take a look at what we plan for next year. We are going to provide announcements on top of the already delivered AWS, SNS, and SQS, and Snowflake as a second part for both of them. We are going to implement Google Cloud Batch, IBM RPA. This is another one that in our list for a while. For a certain amount of time, there were no appropriate APIs to implement the plugin, but now it seems like we can do it, so we will. We complete our IBM ecosystem support. Then Oracle ERP. Not sure. I think we have Oracle e-business, so this is another one. There are lots of different flavors in this integration. SAP Analytics Cloud and Oracle Integration Cloud. Then this Google PubSub is another one that a requirement from an Italian bank. They want to manage some scenario, some earlier warning scenario, they call it, in which they detect if there are anomalies in the operations on bank accounts and things like that. And they want to do that on Google with some services and applying I think also AI to that data analysis, but they need to synchronize that with the workload automation. So they want to push that execution of this scenario from workload automation. Actually, this is a mainframe customer, so they want to do that with these epic agents. Then AWS Step Functions. So this is actually an orchestration service in AWS. And this is a scenario where we want to be the orchestrator of orchestrations, let's say, in cloud services. Obviously, this is an orchestration service that works only in the AWS cloud environment. So many customers have the need to manage multi-cloud environment. So they don't want to rely on just one specific cloud provider, and depending on the scenarios, they use different cloud providers. So they need an external orchestration tool to orchestrate altogether these functionalities. And also one point that we see also in the use cases is that many times our customers manage hybrid scenarios, which means even though if they are using cloud environments for computing services, for especially for storage services and data pipelines, they still have some part of their information, of their data, that they need to keep on premises. And that's why they need an external orchestration tool to combine the different sources of data. Then there are more cloud services for one is a plugin for the event-driven workload automation to based on AZURE events and notification. Then we have two more job types, always for the AZURE cloud provider. So this is the roadmap for the rest of this year.
You know when, Marco, when you're closing the line, specifically OIC?
OIC, I can double check. I'm not sure if I have it in the roadmap slide, but I think should be probably third or fourth quarter. Are you interested in that?
Well, we've migrated half of our eBiz to OIC. But again, we've got custom in-house written scripts, but we fire it off and then we poll it for success. So it'd be interesting to see what the OIC plugin brings to that and whether we
perhaps we could have in the plugin the possibility to have just one job to the submission and the tracking.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Before we start going through some examples of use cases, let's say that a large part of our integrations concern the cloud data services integrations. And this is quite obvious. I mean, what's happening is that many customers are need to export lots of data in cloud storage services, and so they need to execute all these services that deal with moving data, analyzing data, or big data queries, or all these kind of different services that work with data pipelines. And they need workload automation to reduce the complexity of managing these services, because you can have one single workflow where you can mix all the different services and even execute them on different cloud providers if needed, depending on what are your business needs. And you can do that easily with workload automation. That's why we are investing in creating a list of, let's say, a pretty complete list of integrations for each of these providers, so that customers can implement full scenarios, orchestrating them all with our product. So let's start to take a look at these use cases. These are quite complex if we go step by step, but they are actually very similar for certain parts, because what they need normally is to combine execution on cloud with execution on premises, for example. So that's a typical use case. Okay. But let's go one by one. In this case, for example, this is combining a number of plugins, actually 4 of them, on the Google Cloud Platform. So here the scenario is to use the data extracted from different sources, including them in the on-premises database, then work on the data to extract a behavior and understand if this customer, this is a bank, this is related to a bank, this customer can be selected for new offerings, because, for example, analyzing the transactions, you can understand that it has space for investing his money or his or her money in some activities or in some financial products and things like this. And to do that, you need to use cloud services like Google BigQuery that provides insight and analysis of data. So here you can see that the scenario is starting with data accumulated on cloud storage and collected from the storage, analyzed through the Cloud Functions plugin to the Cloud Function cloud service, and classified in different kind of information. So there is a classification in different type of storage. Then, since this data must be related to customer accounts, they need to be kept on databases on premises. They cannot be maintained in the cloud for security and sensitivity issues. So then from there, it starts extracting data and working on that, manipulating the data to extract information that can be useful for business reasons. And through that, then it's possible automatically to use other cloud services to update the catalog of offerings that are available to that customer. So this is an example of automating a full scenario with different cloud services, all orchestrated by workload automation on Google Cloud, and with some passage of data through on-premises infrastructure. Any question? So probably it's not necessary that I go to the details of each plugin. Maybe I will go into more details if any of you has a specific question or curiosity for one of these plugins. But for example, cloud storage is used for managing storage services on Google. Cloud Function is a serverless execution environment. Cloud Data Flow is used to manage data pipelines in Google. And BigQuery is to manage big data and to analyze, provide insights. So statistics and other customizable insights that you can use to then produce the business results for the requirement of this scenario. And we have equivalent scenarios for other cloud providers. On AWS, we have at this point, as you can see, at least 9 different plugins. So there's the possibility to implement a very complex scenario. Also here, this scenario is a use case where there is an automatic analysis of the, let's say, a verification of the transactions executed by a certain customer. It's always talking about the bank, I think, also in this case. So the idea is that they want to automatically verify if a transaction executed by a customer is in line with normal behavior. And if not, that can cause a warning. So it can be an alert sent to the customer to verify that the transaction was actually executed by this customer, or even block the bank account if there is something, an anomaly particularly serious. So to do that here, there are two kind of scenario. One is scheduled, because it's collecting the history of data of the execution of all the transactions that are executed by a certain customer, and then used through a number of different cloud services on AWS, basically to execute machine learning operation and build a behavioral model for that specific customer. So, for example, you can have the need to extract the data from the history of execution of a transaction of a certain customer, transfer that data, perhaps anonymized, to a cloud environment where it can be analyzed by big data and AI machine learning services. And when you build the behavioral model, then that's ready to be used when the new transaction comes in. So then once you have built these kind of models for all the customers that you have, then when a new transaction comes in, there's you can, for example, on AWS invoke, use AWS Lambda to verify the transaction using the transaction data against the behavioral model. So at that point, you can decide if there is an anomaly automatically detected, Then there can be a service, another service based, for example, on AWS SNS that will send another to the customer, or you can perform some other action more specific that will cause a premises account to be locked or alerted. So these are maybe complex scenarios, but are becoming more and more real. I hear many different customers that have this kind of need and are using cloud services and AI machine learning to create behavioral model, trying to analyze the data and get alerts. All these kind of services are becoming more and more common. And in this way, using all these different plugins that we provide, it's possible to automate this kind of scenario in AWS and orchestrate it with workload automation that is particularly useful to mix the execution of the services on the cloud environment with the execution of other applications that are not in that cloud environment. Yes.
So Marco, if I was a business, if I was a business unit and I needed to solve that problem, I would have a programmer use APIs to create that because I want to make my own application in my business. Why would a business go to the workload scheduling automation team and say, "Could you do this for me?"
Okay,
So I see the benefits.
That are, for example, building a kind of black box where there is all the cloud part execution implemented, but then they will probably need to start it from workload automation. So that's another possibility. Obviously, if you instead of having this black box that will execute separately on cloud, maybe submitted by an external service from workload automation, if you have the granularity of invoking the different services, all from a workload automation workflow, you have more control. If you have a failure, you can manage that. You can be alerted. You can rerun part of the workflow. So the fact that you implement those services in a workflow rather than in a program that is self-contained gives you more visibility.
It's time to value, isn't it? Yep. It's going to be quicker to do it this way rather than getting a program to do it. And then secondly, from a supportability point of view, moving forward, we had a scenario where stuff had been created and the person had left the organization. And because it's a black box, nobody knows what's inside or how it works. So they just don't touch it anymore. So any changes, you're sealing it. Yes. So having it in a workflow engine gives you the visibility, gives you the ease of change and supportability moving forward.
Exactly. Another point is this, because with these job plugins, we provide interfaces in which they just need to define the parameters to submit the job, but they don't have to write a script. So it's not really code to maintain. It's a definition in our product.
Okay.
That makes also another strong point. This is part of the workflow executed in a DWC screenshot. It's just an example of how then you can isolate part of the workflows and execute them, monitor them separately. In this case, this is the piece of the workflow where the Lambda, the new transaction triggers the execution on AWS SQS, and then there is a successor, is the Lambda, AWS Lambda job that will execute the verification if the transaction is an anomaly or not. And then you have obviously two different so conditional dependency. You can have two different flows depending on the written code of the job. So let's take a look at the third example. This is on AZURE. Here we have, as you can see, probably we are more advanced on AWS, where we have like 10 plugins, and a little less on the other two cloud providers, but we are going to fill that gap. In this case, the scenario here is slightly different. It's not a bank, it's a retail company that has e-commerce also, and wants to update automatically the price catalog based on variation of prices of the same goods from competitors and other things and other data sources. So the idea is to be very fast in this case to react on the market, modifying prices, keeping into account all the variations that are on the market and other factors, other sources of data. And this can be automated through, for example, in AZURE, using the resource, I think it's the resource, AZURE Resource Manager plugin that is used to deploy environments, and use a tool to retrieve prices data, perhaps gathering them from the internet and collecting them with AZURE Data Factory. Then at that point you have a certain amount of data in the storage. For example, you can manage with AZURE Data Lake Storage. And if you provision an environment to collect the data from the internet or other sources, you can at that point deprovision the environment. It's no longer needed. Now you have the data to analyze. You can use AZURE Databricks to perform data analysis, compare with historical trends, and at that point you can produce a new catalog without prices updates and publish it with perhaps a sub plugin for product inventory. So this is another automated scenario with all plugins that we provide, and in this case the automation helps the retail company to react in a very fast fashion to all the changes on the market, and this is quite common for e-commerce. This is another example on AZURE, where we are mixing more kind of different plugins, not only AZURE Cloud Services. For example, here we have also Axway, that is a file transfer tool, and SNOWFLAKE, there is a cloud data warehouse. So here the scenario that we designed is with health insurance companies processing claims from hospitals, trying to validate them, process them, and start refunding if they're valid, sending also updates to the user on the claims that they have opened, and producing reports in the end that can be used by the business managers of this kind of business. So in this case, we use AZURE to store data. So mostly for data storage. Axway and Snowflake are used to move the data. Axway from an external network to an internal network, for example, and Snowflakes to put that data in a warehouse. And then we use again some other cloud services to analyze the data, and we can envision even a sub workflow that is another kind of analysis to create reports. In the end, what you get is the final execution of either the wire transfer to refund the customer who submitted the claim, and then the notification to the user, and the claim update also for the hospital. And the business user gets the report with all the statistic data on this kind of processing. So another interesting example of how to use all these integrations to create these complex workflows. Then we have a few details on the plugins, specific plugins. Snowflake, as I said, it's a cloud data warehouse, so the plugin covers a number of functionalities. You can execute SQL statements. You can create stage, create file format for data loading, and loading the data from local and cloud storage. So these are 4 different functionalities available through the new Snowflake plugin. Sometimes we start developing a new plugins with a set of functionality, then we get a requirement from customers to expand the functionality and provide more scenarios. I could envision that in the future, most of the jobs could be specific job types rather than scripts, because this way customers can save a lot of effort in writing custom scripts. And the more we provide sophisticated plugins that do a lot of different actions, the more they can avoid to write their own scripts. So maybe just to summarize the business benefits, we have been actually mentioning those during the description of the use cases, but it's more efficient if you can orchestrate these workflows from one single point, from one single tool. You can move, let's say, have a bridge between on-premises and cloud applications without any problem, because it's the workload automation tool doing the bridge. You can have different flows, heterogeneous, because they include different, maybe even different cloud providers in the same workflow, in a single workflow. You don't have to write code when you use the job plugins. So all these kind of business benefits when you use the workload automation plugin. So now we have the last 3 deep dive, let's say. One is about RPA. So why using workload automation and RPA together? Because one point could be, well, RPA is already providing some kind of orchestration capabilities. Most of the RPA tools have some orchestration capabilities because they have to orchestrate somehow the RPA bots. But the capabilities, the orchestration capabilities provided by these tools are limited, not quite sophisticated, and moreover, don't allow an easy interaction with external systems. So although you might think that RPA tools are don't need to be orchestrated by an external tools, instead, even I've been reading analyst reports. They claim that RPA tools are not so strong in the orchestration part, so they need actually orchestration from external tools. This is a use case built on RPA. It's just an example. In this case, we imagine that there is a customer with legacy CRM and ERP systems that don't provide APIs for automation, so they need RPA for that to collect the data that the users provide when they use these tools. But then you want to gather this data and provide, say, mix it with other data that's coming from on-premises application. And at that point, create an order. And at this point, when you need to start to do some more sophisticated actions, so not only just collecting the data through the RPA bots from the systems, but also using that data together with other data sources, combine it and create an order for an ERP tool, then you need certainly external orchestration to do that, because it will be too complicated to do just with RPA. Questions?
Is anyone using RPA today? Which one?
Other plugins that we deliver the SAP data services. This is a SAP ETL tool. This is a new plugin in the area of SAP integrations. We have reached the number of 9 SAP plugins. So this is a classic integration that we provide for SAP. The same goes for integrated BP. IBP, it's a cloud-based software solution to manage supply chain planning, basically. So with this plugin for workload automation, it's possible to accelerate the planning process and decision making. Use 2 different interfaces to optimize the user experience. You can use the web interface for planning and the Microsoft Excel for decision making. You can
very old-fashioned to use Excel.
But I did that. It's not that it's something we can. Yeah, I was surprised to read that. Actually, I didn't know this sub application, but it does provide output through Microsoft Excel. Normally, when you use these applications, you may also want to combine it with more complicated business processes, and that's where it can be useful also here to invoke them. Use our job plugin. Okay, finally the LzLabs software-defined mainframe. This is specific for this software that is used to download the workload, decrease the workload on the mainframe and bring part of it on distributed. So we provided this specific plugin for customers who are running this process with this tool. Okay, this was a long list of integrations that we provided, but I wanted also to take advantage of this chance for showing how many possibilities there are. I know that probably it may be not part of your job specifically because you're working in the scheduling part of the organization, but I think that in the future, more and more there will be mixing of competencies because you have the orchestration capabilities. Other parts of organizations need to use some applications, and at a certain point they can realize that they, or at least at a higher level, there can be the idea that there is more control if you are using a single tool to orchestrate everything. And you have the tool already in your environment, so why not using it for all the purposes that we support? Okay, I hope it was interesting. Are there any questions from the remote participants?
Yes, they're all good.
Anyone still there?
They might be sleeping.
Okay.
I have one question.
Okay.
It's not about this. It's this is obviously relating to all the new products and new job types you're going down dynamic agents, yeah.